Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shelby.
Thank you. So yes, as Shelby had said, I'm Elizabeth Swearingen. This is Jessie Cozza, and our workshop today is going to focus on our therapeutic theater performance and drama therapy group with active and retired members of the New York City Fire Department surrounding the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So we did this performance in this workshop, now 4 years ago, which doesn't seem like it. But we are here to reflect that to you and to invite you into an experiential of that process. So today, just to kind of give you a guide of what we will be doing throughout the workshop is we're just introducing ourselves. We're going to go through a PowerPoint, just kind of laying everything out, our process, a little bit of a background into the fire department, drama therapy, and therapeutic theater. And then we will take a brief break if that feels right, like 5 minutes. And then we're going to come back for an experiential and then a closing process at the end. We welcome questions throughout. So if somebody has a question, you can always present it in the chat. And also like in that 5 minute break, we can address any questions as well or at the end.
Mhm.
Jessie, anything
And
you
you
wanted
can
to
jump
add?
right in too and ask a question, right? I mean, especially we have a nice, cozy, small group here, so chat as well.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Um,
go ahead.
just to introduce ourselves briefly, I'm Elizabeth Swearingen. I'm in New York. I am a registered drama therapist, licensed creative arts therapist, and my history as a clinician includes working with the fire department at their counseling service unit, which is where I worked with Jessie. And then I also have experience in inpatient psychiatry in the city hospital system and private practice as well. And then doing some therapeutic theater with NYU, with the fire department, and then with other community-based organizations.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. Um, so my name's Jessie Cozza, and I'm also in New York. Um, I am a licensed creative arts therapist, drama therapist, and EMDR practitioner, and 2 years into somatic experiencing training. It's a 3 year, well, I don't even know, could be lifetime of training, but there are three years officially. I'm in the second. So, and I'm really, it feels really nice to be giving this presentation now because I worked for the fire department for almost 12 years, and I left last month. It was a very needed and very sad ending, all the things. But it's been really nice to just kind of have this presentation to review and just thinking about all the work we've done there and the population. So I have a private practice in New York and I'll be expanding that. Um and yeah, had the honor of working with Elizabeth. We were there together for a few years, right?
Yeah.
And we met there. We went through the same NYU program, but we met at the fire department and continued to work together.
So
So maybe if we can just go around and just share, your name, pronouns again if you feel comfortable and where you are. Um, and we were curious, just like one reason why you chose this workshop. I don't know. We might even want to throw in a fun fact. We've got a nice small group. I don't know.
yeah. Hmm. I like that. Maybe a fun fact in addition,
Yeah.
if it feels right. No pressure, anybody, but whoever is warmed up to it.
I can start us off, but I don't think I can come up with a fun fact super on the fly.
How about an unfun fact?
Yeah,
The
like
least fun.
something
Fun
really
fact.
We
boring.
want to know the most boring thing about
The
you.
most factual statements. Um, I'm Allison. I am a music therapist of 7 years. I spent about 6 of those years working in hospice. And more recently, I am clinical manager of dementia programs at ITA. She, her pronouns, as you can see. I live in Chicagoland, of course, because working with ITA. And factual thing about me is that I have a harp that I'm trying to learn how to play, and it is going.
Oh, cool. Maybe you can be in our next therapeutic theater production with the
We'll
harp.
see.
Right?
Amazing.
Like ancient Greek vibes. That's cool.
Thanks, Allison.
And Allison, you said you do dementia care now?
Yes, yes. So a lot of in hospice, of course, end of life, which included a lot of Alzheimer's dementia.
Mhm.
Currently focusing primarily on dementia work at ITA. And yeah, we have a lot of clients who've experienced all kinds of worldly events.
Mm.
So this, of course, aligns with something that many of my clients may have experienced and maybe very personally at some point. And so being a little more aware of that, especially since I was not of an adult age when this occurred.
Mhm. Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you for
Allison.
sharing that.
I
Which
can
is an
jump in
important,
next.
yeah, go for it.
So my name is Emily, she, her pronouns. I'm also an ITA employee. I'm a music therapist. This is like my 5th year now, going in my 5th year now of being a music therapist. And I actually just moved to Chicago last year from New York City. So this was a really interesting topic to me, not just because I'm from New York State and I'm from upstate, but lived most recently in New York City. And that's where I was practicing. That's where I interned in 2019. And so my internship happened during COVID, and I was really inspired. I was doing my master's degree. I was really inspired um, by my supervisors who had been in New York City since 9/11. So for my thesis, I was looking at like the different disasters that had happened in New York City, starting with 9/11, then Hurricane Sandy, and then COVID-19.
Mm.
And just like how music therapists in New York City responded to that, like what kind of community needs were present, and things like that. So this presentation really stuck out to me, being about 9/11. And also I was just like interested to see it from a different creative arts therapy perspective. And I know that like firefighters were like a population that really had significant needs. I mean, among everybody else in New York City that during that time, but firefighters especially had like a lot of trauma with that event. So yeah, that's why this was really like an interesting presentation to me. So I'm excited to be here.
That's really interesting. Well, welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have a fun fact you want to share or a boring fact?
Let's see. Um, I don't know. My fun fact, I guess, is that I'm a big dog person and I like to do agility with my dog. So that's what I spend most of my free time doing, is spending time with my dog and doing things with my dog.
Oh, nice. What kind of dog do you have?
These are rescue mix.
Oh, the
Yeah.
best. The best.
What's her name?
Nora.
Nora.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I think I can go next. My name is Jeffrey Wolf. I will share with you first that I think about 50% of the attendees are doing asynchronously. So they are watching a lot of these videos post the conference. So I think if you had around 18 register, you'll have about 9 here. So you have a lot of ITA folks who are present with you. And my background, I'm a music therapist. I'm our COO at ITA. And the boring fact is that I'm sitting here making nets right now. So if you see me doing things, I'm working with strings in the background. just the impact on 9/11. I know exactly where I was. Um, I was a sophomore in college, witnessing that in the morning and then throughout the day, and just witnessing how all of us on campus responded to that, and then of course fallout, the political fallout, etc. So very interested to hear this presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. I switched my Wi-Fi right when you started talking, so I went out for a second. But are you in Chicago as well?
Yeah, I'm currently in Rogers Park, Chicago, so at the edge.
I could introduce myself next. I kind of already did, but yes, I'm Shelby, also an ITA employee. I have been an art therapist in the field for almost 3 years, and I've been with ITA for about a year and a half, I think, or a little less than that. Yeah, I don't necessarily have any experience with the first responders, but I do like a lot of my clients are like in the helping profession, so like work with some school employees, some clients like in the medical field, and we talk about burnout and compassion fatigue a lot. So I feel like this is very relevant. And I also just like working with ITA have found a love for drama therapy and like always want to learn more. Um, and my fun fact is I went to Japan in November and I installed these little like trinket shelves of my like things that I bought. So let me see if I can get a trinket to show everyone.
Ooh.
I have this little keychain. There's so many trinkets in Japan. It's amazing. So, if you are a little collector like I am, it's dangerous, but very fun.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
amazing. I was so hoping you were going to choose that one too. Oh, great. How long were you there?
I think like 12 days. So it was a good amount of time to like get some experience and kind of like not so long that I got homesick, which was good, but I definitely want to go back.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Shelby.
Yeah, thanks.
Um, I'm Crystal. Sorry, my camera's off. I'm sick and so look really terrible today. Uh,
Totally
I
fine.
am the oddball. I don't work at ITA. I'm an LCPC in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And I chose this one because I lived through um, 9/11. I was an adult working, and I remember exactly where I was. And in my practice, I also work with some first responders and have a lot of first responders in my family. And a fun fact about me is I really love to travel, and we travel to very small, remote locations as opposed to big touristy places.
Mm,
What's been one of your favorites?
yeah.
Gosh, they're all my favorite. We went to really far in northern Canada. I don't remember exactly the name of the town, but we went up there and we camped for about a week. And it was cold, but it was quiet and beautiful, and there was nobody around, and it was just so refreshing and rejuvenating.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Crystal. And Crystal, because you don't have on your Zoom screen, if you feel comfortable doing so, would you share your preferred pronouns with us?
She, they.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And that's everyone. I didn't share a fun fact about me or a boring
Yeah.
fact. I like plants. I'm a Taurus, earth sign. Um, yeah, I think that this is a pretty boring fact, actually. So I'll share that one. I enjoy plants and nature.
Feels very Taurian. Is that how you would say it?
I think
Taurian.
so.
Um, well, and I didn't share a fun fact either. My fun fact, I just feel like it feels like I need to say it because I don't know. But as I'm very, very gratefully in my good friend's apartment. I already shared this, I think, at the very beginning. So yeah, I'm in their space and I'm hearing my two kids upstairs who are really loud. And my dear friends who are always like, no, you're not loud at all. And I'm like, oh my God, what are they doing up there? I've done this test before because I've used to actually I used this space a lot during the pandemic when I was working here and they were away. But anyway, so here they are. There's a lovely, lovely family, good friends. That's my fun fact.
Oh,
All right.
y-
Well, we'll move into the PowerPoint.
yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna click off the participants and share. My screen. Oh, wait. Okay. All right. Bear with me here. Wait, why did I now? I've lost you guys. You still see me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And let's go to
Slideshow up there in the
next.
top right.
Okay. All right. So here we are, finding home. So we'll just talk a little bit like, first responders. I know, we're all familiar. We've got some people right with family too as well. Um, so first responders obviously respond to all kinds of, disasters, emergencies, um, car accidents, domestic disturbances, mental health crises, um, pediatric emergencies, overdoses. Right? You guys can read them. I won't read them all out loud. Gas leaks,
Mm-hmm.
terrorism, um, terrorism threats. And also, I don't know if we have it in here, but I feel like it's also just like all of the false alarms,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so there's nervous system kind of a back and forth between emergency, not emergency. Sometimes they get a heads up, but it's not even always right, so constantly kind of preparing. Um, so the treatment needs of first responders. So are we going to talk about the CSU, which is where we work? I think that's maybe in the next slide, right, Elizabeth? But
Yeah. So this is
um,
there. So to meet the needs, right, of these
yeah.
of first responders, which is Jessie was pointing out, right? You can have like something as being stuck in an elevator or a gas leak to something like a mass shooting or a terrorist attack or the threat of everything, right? Um, and so to meet the needs of the population, there are a few things that we were going to address just in a general sense of like how to meet the needs of the first responder population, but then how we had seen in a firsthand account that the FDNY did actively work to meet the needs of that population. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Jessie. Do you want to
Yeah.
go from there?
Yeah. So Elizabeth and I both worked with the counseling service unit for the FDNY. So it's prior to 9/11, I think September 10th, 2001, and before it was like maybe one unit. I think it was just one unit. And it was like it was a very punitive place to have to get sent that was predominantly like you got too drunk at the firehouse, you need to sober up, went out to the CSU. And, it was mainly treatment, alcohol treatment but small. So of course expanded so much right after 9/11. There's 5 locations throughout, not just the boroughs, but through, other areas close by the city, within New York State. Um, and there was a huge expansion, a lot of money, a lot of budgets were put into it. It continues to shift and maintain and support itself. But I think what was one thing that was really interesting about or beneficial about 9/11's impact, mental health impact and treatment on the FDNY is what people started to realize was like how needed it always was. And treatment got a bit destigmatized. It's still, it's still there, but and what people started to realize was like all of these people were coming in with 9/11 related trauma and all this other stuff. So obviously it's, what we know about trauma is it's compounded, right? And the more traumatic incidences you have, the more you can be, suspect to having PTSD, developing any kind of impact trauma later on. So, the counseling unit really does try to, just meet the needs and be there as traumas come. Of course, it doesn't always, people come in who are retired, as well from incidents that have happened many, many years ago. But I mean, I think that's one thing that's really great. Like right now, it's like any fatal fire or people are always coming in, getting checked on. It's sort of like it's within the culture now in the FDNY to come to the CSU and get treatment for things that come up on the job. And that really is a result of 9/11.
And Jessie, if I can jump in also, the work that's been done to build into this peer program also that the CSU has. They have an active and retired peer program where they have folks who were firefighters, EMS workers, like will go into EMS stations or firehouses and kind of speak one-on-one to members following like a fatal fire or a pediatric death, that they encountered on the job, and just to check in to see if somebody does need a little bit of therapy at that time or even time off. So that peer program also helps to facilitate getting folks in the door to the counseling service unit. And something that I wanted just to say is that, in this first kind of section, as we're speaking to the treatment needs of first responders, we have this really broad lens, right, of what a first responder is, what that constitutes, and then we're going to like narrow in to focus on the FDNY because that is the first responder population that we have worked with, right? But then, as some of you have mentioned, the first responders of like, emergency department work staff or police, the fire. So these are like, Sesame Street says, like these are the people in our neighborhood who encounter trauma daily as part of their work, right? And so in thinking of those populations and the population of first responders more broadly, the trauma that they're exposed to as clinicians, when we think of the interventions that we are making, it's not just like this collective group trauma, but also that we know how that trauma is experienced in an individual way. Even as some of us had said at the beginning with 9/11, and I can speak for myself too, right? We have this global, this incident, right? This mass trauma that is a community trauma, but that we all experience it differently. I remember the clothes I was wearing. I remember my day, like from the beginning to the end, right? Like how trauma affects us both as a community and on an individual basis. And so the CSU recognized that, as Jessie was saying, and really did work to expand the program from, as you were saying, like one office to 5, and grow the staff and grow the peer program to meet those needs.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Elizabeth. So, just shifting to, trauma therapy and therapeutic theater. Which Elizabeth and I were the first 2 drama therapists to get to the CSU. We're very lucky to have gotten there. Um, and so, I mean, yeah, Elizabeth, do you want to just talk a little bit about, I'm trying to be mindful of time too. Elizabeth, I know
Yeah.
we have about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Like I don't,
Oh,
maybe you want to speak a little bit on this and we can kind of move through.
sure. And also, if any questions come up, you can post them in the chat. We're also going to have a little bit of a break. So just to address that, if anybody has anything come up throughout. So I'm so excited that not everybody is a drama therapist in this group. It's so great. So I feel like, it's a little bit of a refreshed perspective coming to drama therapy and therapeutic theater. So we have the very basic definitions of drama therapy and therapeutic here. And in a nutshell, drama therapy is so inclusive, right? And it's the intentional use of drama theater processes to achieve therapeutic goals. So we use the powers of creative arts interventions, as we all know, like aesthetic distance. Creativity is healing, and creativity can be a sign of health, and performance being healing. So we operate with those principles, and definitely so many more. And then therapeutic theater, we're still like working to define it always, and same with drama therapy, but it's basically a theater performance with the intent of the process and the performance itself being a therapeutic process. So there's no reviews written at the end. The audience, if there is an audience, is all on the same page of this is a therapeutic process. We try to leave our critics at the door. And really explore in real time that belief of how performance is healing and how that can be achieved as a community, as a group. It's also a group process, right? Through a therapeutic theater performance, through a production of theater. So as we're talking a little bit about drama therapy and therapeutic theater, and we spoke a little bit about the fire department and first responders, we're hopefully starting to see where some of the lightning strikes between these parallel lines, like, right? So therapeutic theater and drama therapy, we spoke about the power of the group, how that can be helpful and healing, and especially in this way that 9/11 affected us, not only just as a group, but us all individually. We had a means of creating a group therapeutic process through therapeutic theater. So these are some of the principles that we just worked with for drama therapy and therapeutic theater in our process together. And I should also say that Jessie and I both had, before this production of the Odyssey, we had drama therapy trauma groups at the FDNY where we worked with Greek myth. And these were some of the principles that we worked with in those groups as well. So you could just read through what we have listed there if anybody has any questions or anything.
Yeah, let us know. I mean, we didn't know how much drama therapy, right? And I know there aren't any drama therapists here, but how much familiarity with drama therapy or not you guys might have. So, we won't jump into it all unless, of course, let us know if you're curious. But yeah.
And like importantly, through cultural competency, we also understood that the 20th anniversary of 9/11 carried weight to it. And we wanted to mark that anniversary and honor it with the population in a way that felt good enough, in a way that could give folks the sanctioned space to feel, to heal in community, to express, and really just mark the date. So is any other thing that we need to touch on this slide? I know it's kind of dense.
I just want to add to that quickly, and this isn't so much specific to drama therapy, but just, like in terms of marking a 20th anniversary, that I think is important for anyone who goes through, trauma, that love, like the time time frame of it can be really valuable. But also, I think, you know, when you're dealing with a terrorist attack or any kind of big public event, right? Like there was so much anxiety too around like, you know, and not anxiety, bracing, I think, around all the, you know, the memorial is going to be bigger. The news shows are going to be bigger, right? It's already, right? Like it's like we always, when we work with 9/11 responders, is sort of by August, right? Things start to get more and more intense for them. But the added piece of just the public, you know, media component of it and the embracing way earlier because of the 20th anniversary.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think something that we also would hear as drama therapists is like, how are you getting firefighters and paramedics to do like to act things out, right? And you know, that's I'm sure as everybody is creative arts therapists in here, where you're like so much more. But um there were parts of the population that actually really like drama therapy fit well with the population. There's a lot of storytelling. Humor within the population was a survival mechanism, also a tool for healing. And so like the storytelling component, the playfulness of the population, you think of costume, you think of roles, um, you think
I mean,
of,
they are
oh,
like
sorry,
a
go ahead.
ridiculous circus theater troupe, most firehouses, right? So it's like,
So there were things that actually fit well. So Jeffrey, I'm just looking at,
yes. Do you want me to read it out loud? I just
yeah,
saw it.
sure, go for it.
So how much groundwork did you need to set for drama therapy and then into a performance as process, or did you have a buy-in because of your longstanding roles at the counseling center? That's a good question. I think it was kind of a combination of both. You know, I mean, then there was a common, you know, I'm trying to think of like the group, the Odyssey group that we did and who, you know, there's definitely always some people that join and did join that group that were already like my own individual clients who there's like that level of trust, maybe that kind of they just bought in. Um, and You know, we were clear and transparent that this is a creative arts therapy group, and we're going to be working with myth and storytelling, and there may be an opportunity for performance. You know, we also really did emphasize a lot of like that's a choice that you can make. You don't have to be a part of the, you know, performance. And as any, you know, with any theater, right? There's so many different roles outside of, you know, the actors, right? That's needed to make a theater performance. But we really kind of open that up to people of like, if that's the one thing that's freaking you out about joining, please just join. Like, and we'll kind of
Yeah.
work through that.
I think we also had some buy-in just based off of the population itself being like a community, right? And they work as like, you know, as theater, you know, there's that like old saying of like the play is only as great as like the person who's pulling the curtain, right? It's the show's only as big as the smallest actor. Like everybody has a job. It's kind of similar to an EMS station, a firehouse. Everybody has a role. Everybody has to work as a team. Um, so, you know, that's something also to be mindful of in and of itself of like, do you want, you know, we'd have like clients saying like, well, I'll do it if you really want me to, you know, so like you have to kind of gauge in as like, is this something you're interested in? And like, it's not an order to take part. Um, so there would, but there was also like sometimes a sense of duty or obligation that could come up as well. Um, which is all grist for the mill, right? But because it is each one of these firehouses, EMS stations, they operate as a community. I think that also fit into the performance and drama therapy principle of like the group work.
Yeah.
All right, should we move on to the next?
Mm-hmm. Why isn't it?
Just really wants us to
Oh.
stay here.
Is that, yeah. Okay. I know. So, okay, good. So yeah, just moving on a little bit to talk about, our choice of the Odyssey. And you know what? I'm gonna maybe, Elizabeth, if it's okay with you, I feel like I know we could talk about this all for hours, but I think maybe just for time's sake, maybe we can talk about this a little briefly and then really kind of get into the content of the groups and
Yep.
then have some questions so we can, kind of know where some curiosities might be so we can kind of move back to. Does that sound good to you?
Hmm.
I mean, as quickly as we're capable of. I don't know. Get easily chatty around this stuff. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, well, and as Elizabeth said, we had done a few Greek myths prior to this. And then I have done some since too. So we've done a lot of myths um with this population. And I mean, I think, right, like using the projection in drama therapy of text. Um, I guess we kind of get into whatever. There's using sort of this larger than life frame, gives a lot of aesthetic distance, which is something, within drama therapy, sort of aesthetic distance is a theory of like, how close or far away from emotion are you, right? And so with drama therapy, we want to kind of find that middle place, right? So if we're so close in, it can become overwhelming. If we're too far away, it becomes just disconnected. So the sort of epic proportion of Greek mythology, and in this case, the Odyssey it's a poem, right? Not really a myth, but within that realm of like really giving a lot of more emotional distance. Um, it's epic. It's about war, right? Also the 20th. So the Odyssey, I don't know how familiar people are with the Odyssey. Um, so 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 the main piece, or the biggest thing was like, oh my God, right? It takes Odysseus 20 years to return home, right? It's like 10 years of fighting and 10 years of returning back. It's the 20th anniversary of 9/11, like perfect, right? That was like the biggest thing, right, Elizabeth? So I'm kind of trying to, I don't know if there's anything, Elizabeth, that feels extra kind of big to throw in there, or we could move on. What do you think?
I think it's just important to note we had never done a therapeutic theater performance before.
Yeah.
The myths were done in groups, so the performance was something new, and so we wanted a narrative that was like longer, had more legs to it. We could explore different parts. Not that any of these myths couldn't, obviously, but I think the grand narrative of the Odyssey really fit that need of a therapeutic theater performance as well.
Mhm. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Um, so this is we're not going to, read all this together, but this was the really brief snippet that we used, not snippet, but sort of the summary that we read almost every group that we came back to, as a repetition. There was three other stories that we focused on that we will talk about. So that went a little bit more deeply in. So this is what we used, and we would kind of trade off how we would read it. We would read it out loud. Yeah. Um, and then right here, that's kind of just the basic. Odysseus, the Greek king of Ithaca, embarks on a long and perilous journey home after the Trojan War, battling mythical creatures, divine intervention, and thunderous storms.
So this was once we knew that we were going to use the Odyssey for the therapeutic theater group, and we had our group of participants ready to go. We had a mix of some active and retired members of the FDNY, with Jessie and myself, two clinicians, one intern, a drama therapy intern. So these are some of the clinical interventions that we were using with the agent text as a projective, right? And we think of projectives as creative arts therapists, right? They can open up and expand and be used as a means to express and 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 really just like the aesthetic distance, as Jessie was speaking to, spoke so well for this population in being able to do that. So the first intervention we made was a simplification of the text, right? We think of the Odyssey and how big it is, and it's told out of sequence. There are all of these stories. So Jessie and I found like a synopsis that was like Cliff's Notes, and also narratives for children, and not to say anything negative to our population in that way. It was more so to speak to something so grand in such a attainable and accessible way. We really stripped down the text, and wanted everything to be like one page, right? So there was the simplification of the narrative itself. The duration I spoke to, like we would have 1 to 2 pages of text. So like it would, and the 2 pages is speaking to the synopsis, and then whatever story we were going further into. We needed a brief duration that would allot for enough time to be read in each session while also maintaining time for experientials. The group itself was done on Zoom. So also Zoom being a visual platform, we could use that. I'm sorry, Jessie, can you go right back to the last slide really quickly? Oh, and then just lastly, the repetition. So one thing that we do know about trauma, right, and how it affects the brain is that it is trauma is experienced non-sequential, right? We have these very active trauma memories that live in our brains, and the cohesion is one of the first things to go. So we were also speaking to integrating cohesive narrative through the repetition, repetition also speaking to storytelling, establishing narratives that had a beginning and a middle and an end, encouraging recall, also encouraging like a mastery of the text, folks remembering parts of it, folks hearing a part of it for the first time after 3 weeks of reading it. So those were some of our clinical interventions. Thanks, Jessie, for going back to that.
Yes, of course.
So this was the group itself. We had active and retired members of the FDNY. This is what I was just speaking to with Jessie. Our group was virtual. It took place over the summer leading up to the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We had these 8 group sessions plus individual devising sessions, which we'll talk about when we talk about devising the script, and then a performance session and a closing session. The structure of the group itself, we had a warm up. We would read through our text as some like real grounding experience, and then have an experiential where we would go into the text in a way using drama therapy. Also, the way Jessie and I work as creative arts therapists and drama therapists is, thinking of theater as the house where all art forms can come together to create a story. We also like to work with art, music, movement. So experientials could be writing about something, drawing a picture, things like that. We would have reflection for processing, and then a closing.
Right. So we chose 3 stories to work with based on, a lot of the themes that Elizabeth and I had seen, just knowing this knowing 9/11 related PTSD in this population specific. So we chose the stories, and really there's sort of the themes around substance use, abuse, disassociation, grief, loss, community, legacy, and family. So those are kind of the big ones, really, I think, for this population in general. So we had this story, The Lotus Eaters, was a longer story that we did take from a children's book, which great book, by the way. I loved it. But a children's book about the Odyssey. And so what you're seeing right here is even just slimmed down from that to be very, 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 very brief, just to kind of give you guys a sense of the stories because they're so good. Um, so, okay. I don't know. Elizabeth, should we read these?
I think for the sake of time,
Yeah, I think maybe we
we
could.
we can just leave it up there as we're talking. Unfortunately, I know
Yeah.
we don't
So
have as much
so
time.
yeah, I won't read through all this. You guys can. I mean, it's not that much. But the Odysseus and his men go to this island where they end up finding these lotus flowers that make them high and forget things. And some of the men wanted to stay in the island forever and forget about the war. And Odysseus had to really tie them up and force them back on the ship. And they sailed on. And
And I
then
was just to note too, that was the first story that we went into as a group, and it ended up being a very playful story to go into. I think also we were very subversive clinicians with like saying, no, let's not go. We don't want to remember, like playing with what it would be like to forget. And
it was so
also
fun. We basically like pretended to like just like we all got high on a beach together for
from our Zoom
right.
screens, right? Like
Yes.
the imagined space. Um, and then also clinically addressing, right? That was one of the first behavioral results of 9/11 exposure. There was so much substance use, especially in those initial months right after 9/11. So it made sense that it was the first story we went into.
Yeah, thanks. So the second story, The Land of the Dead, is about it was sort of definitely our story about really facing the deep, dark underworld of loss and grief. Um, and playing with or working with the fear and also like the really personalized sadness and grief, right? It's like Odysseus goes down there, he ends up finding his mother there, and that's how he learns she's dead and that she died of a broken heart, because of him not coming home. So he learns that, right? So it's this really, really intimate moment there, and yet at the same time, there's all of these like really scary, um, ghostly, dark spirits just kind of like trying to really pull him down under there. Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
We think of aesthetic distance with each of these stories, right? So this one obviously is a little closer. The aesthetic distance is not very far away. Um, so one of the things that we really utilized prior to going into the story was resourcing the group. Here we have this hero that was in Odysseus that was everyone and no one, right? Odysseus is such a charismatic uh, and complex hero, which again, myths, epic poems can lend themselves to that quality in their gods and their humans that are faulty gods or godlike humans, right? They're really complex characters. So we as a group resourced Odysseus before he went into the land of the dead, giving him whatever he might need to navigate this really scary part of the story. So it was a beautiful moment where the group could come together and give these gifts to Odysseus so that he could get through this part with a little bit more ease.
Yeah. Our last story was titled Peace. And it's the end when Odysseus returns home and he's reunited with his father, who's quite old at this point. And they have a great feast together with Odysseus, its father, and Odysseus's son. So this is sort of this, three generational men coming together and having a big feast and having a reunion, which is really meaningful for most people in the group.
Yeah. And offering offering family food, togetherness. Food is a really big part of the culture. Legacy can be a big part of the culture, the FDNY culture. So we had some things that touched on that. And also just seeing, we really wanted to make an intention of seeing the piece, like, right, seeing what the light at the end of the tunnel was. Like having him get home.
Yeah. So our group sessions overall, they looked like this. So they were all on Zoom except for the last group, which is kind of wild. And Elizabeth and I were kind of reflecting that. We're like, what? Seriously? Anyways, it worked. It really did work. So, we do a brief checking in, who might be absent or whatever the next week or things like that, scheduling. Then we would do a warm up, drama therapy warm up, any kind of an embodied thing. We really incorporated a lot of like the myth into the warm ups. We read through the text, either one of the stories that we were working on and also the larger frame of the Odyssey that we showed you earlier. And then we would have our experiential. So working with some of, many expressive arts, as Elizabeth said, we really sort of kept the frame as doing a lot of drama therapy, but also a lot of writing, a lot of artwork, a lot of music. I think when, Elizabeth, if I'm remembering correctly, I mean, I think that especially for the Land of the Dead, when there was a need to have a little bit more emotional distance, we did keep two more options around writing monologues, and artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, we'd have a processing reflection. Also always asking the group like what they might notice about the story that week, because we are repeating, whether those three stories and also the main story. So like kind of also just like kind of continuing to sort of digest and explore how it may be hitting them that day, different from, the week before. And then ritual closing, which usually would look and sort of, this is like a classic drama therapy closing. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but just sort of like, taking one thing from the group. We've got this big, maybe we'll do it at the end. I don't know if we have time, but yes, Jeffrey, maybe, seeing your hand, right? But like something you want to take from the group, something you want to leave from the group, as a way to find some sort of a containment and closing, and also a transitional piece to bring with you.
And just to speak to what you were saying, Jessie, about the with the Land of the Dead, the intention of writing or drawing, right, is to move a bit away from the body. We all think of drama therapy as being so embodied, but sometimes with that embodiment, especially if we're touching on something that's really, really close, the aesthetic distance is really close to the story. We wanted to move out of the body. I mean, writing and drawing still is, right? But move to something where it was not as close physically. And then also tracking, like we would just track things. We would write them down in our groups too. Like we would have like a whiteboard or a big sheet of paper. And then in the virtual sessions, we would keep things like in the chat or on the whiteboard on Zoom of just having like a parking lot of information that would come up, or statements from the group, which was also to help with like cognitive functioning, beginning, middle, and end, just holding all of the content of the group, making explicit what might be implicit, right? And really just like honoring what has been said with tracking.
All right, thank you. Um, Elizabeth, do you want to speak a little bit on the script? We're going to get to
Yeah.
the script, and you guys are going to see the script and work with the script a little bit today.
Yeah. That's
But
going to
Elizabeth
be
was the predominant playwright here, so.
So that's going to be our experiential today is we're going to work with the script that we created with the participants. So you're going to see that. So we, throughout the process, knew, right, we had a performance and was going to be at the end of this group. And so one really like in therapeutic theater, the script is such a container, right? It's like this tangible thing that's holding all of the content of the group. Um, it's not only just a projective text, but it's also the container of everything that has come up in the group. So what we did to make this text is we use that synopsis. That was kind of
Which
like the
really was, I
spine.
think it really was Spark. It was from
Yeah,
Spark.
like truly, yeah, like this is like no like PhD in classics required to create this synopsis. I think it was like
Yeah.
Spark Notes, Cliff's Notes, like the children's narrative. Like it was very accessible. So we use that as our spine, so to speak, of the text, and then or of the script. I'm sorry, and then we asked participants how we were going to have the spine, right, and have like these offshoots of it, where we would toggle. Our script itself was a toggling of aesthetic distance. The script, the narrative, the synopsis was the most distance, right? We did not write that. We are not Homer or, the author of Spark Notes. It is far, far away from us. But the aesthetic distance would be toggled with in these offshoots where folks would have their own content become a part of the script. And we gave the option to draw, to like write a piece of music, to or not just draw, like create like a piece of artwork, a song, piece of movement, whatever they wanted to do. And everyone wanted to write something, which really served us for creating a script, right? So it was like all written. So we then asked participants like what part of the narrative they were really connecting to, what felt the most salient for them. And whether it was a role, whether it was the land of the lotus eaters, whether it was something that they had explored in an experiential. And then they went into that in more depth to create a part of the script. So they would write someone had written a letter from the perspective of like Odysseus's mother, right? So like this, so that was, and that came up in an experiential, that became part of the text. And we also left it open because we had people who wanted to really contribute and folks that wanted to, contribute. So we let the work speak for itself in that way. Like whoever wanted to contribute more, we found a way for them to contribute more. Whoever wanted to contribute a little bit, we found a way for them to do so. As an intervention with the text, so as Jessie was saying, I served as a playwright of it. I had an intervention of the stage directions. That was my clinician, so to speak, right? A way of like navigating, directing the performance by not directing the performance, like giving stage directions, who goes where, who does what. So that was a way of holding. Also, as an intervention, I really tried very hard to not edit what folks wrote. Typos, spelling errors, whatever. Like we honored the work as it was and kind of tried to get it as close to what they had originally presented. And then piecing it all together. And it was a work in process that we edited it and then came back to it. So that was a bit of the process of building the script together as a group. And so it was very much so devised, co-created.
Mm-hmm. So the performance, we had one performance. Um, it was at Fort Totten Park in northern Queens, which is where um, this location, the CSU was. Um, we really lucked out. Fort Totten Park is an old fort from the early 1800s. And so we let the contacted the Parks Department, who's in charge, of that area in this ancient old fort, and they let us use it for the performance. So we were literally with these like out on the water. Like it says where like Long Island Sound meets the East River in New York City, right in by the Throgs Neck Bridge in Queens, if anyone's familiar with it. And I mean, we're in these, I don't know when the fort was actually, it's the 1800s. Anyways, I mean, it was like a dream of a set to have. Unbelievable. And also well, okay, so yeah, so we ended up, we didn't, I mean, this could look very, very different if we had a different amount of time to work with it. Um, so the performance was the first time we all met together in person. And it was really the first time. I mean, Elizabeth, did we get the scripts? I think we got the scripts came out before so people could read them, but
Yeah.
it was really the first time coming together. And so we had one, so it was, the two of us, and then we had our intern, our drama therapy intern, Samantha, and then we had another clinician who was wonderful, who came as the audience, as the witness.
We had like scarves for costumes, very basic props whenever it was needed.
We
And then
wrote
folks brought stuff from home.
some swords,
Yeah.
ropes.
Yeah. So it was in a way, right. And again, like one of the things therapeutic theater is it can be as like bare bones in and of itself of a theater performance or, full scale production with lighting and sound and mics. Ours was not. Um, this, there was no dress rehearsal, as we said. This was like, we're just going to do it. We're going to read through it. We're going to honor it as it is, as it was, as it will be. It's a living, breathing, ephemeral experience.
And I just want to add too, I mean, we didn't know what this was going to look like when we started the group. We offered it to, we talked about like, do you want to invite friends? Do you want to invite family? Do we want to invite some other like,
Yeah.
Some of the directors of the CSU, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the not having an audience or having the one audience member was the group's choice.
Yes.
They may have chosen something different if we had gotten to that place a month or two, before that date. And there was like a lot more time for rehearsal. I mean, it was what we had, it was what we worked with. It was incredible and really special. And I do think there was an element for them of and not quite knowing how it was all going to really unfold and look and feeling, definitely insecure about inviting people to that. So I think, we don't know how it would have looked different as with drama therapy, moving with spontaneity, creativity, being flexible. Like that's, it came together in a really, really special way. It did feel like there's a lot more life in this, and there was several of the members were like, can we do this again? Can we do more of this? Right. Like it's sort of like we really just kind of got it something started.
Yeah.
And it was done on September 13th, which I remember because that's actually my birthday. So I'm not bringing it up for that reason, but it was a few days after the 11th. And that was also, I mean, we checked in with the members about that, about what date and time would feel right around the anniversary. What seems to be a really common experience is that there's a real relief on the 12th for, I think, everyone I've ever worked with who has PTSD 9/11 related. So it was kind of, I think it was important that we really did wait till after the 11th.
And Jessie, thank you for bringing up the audience, as that is a part of therapeutic theater process, is deciding what the audience is going to look like, who the audience will be, who will be there. So that was a living thing throughout the group as well. It shifted, as we got closer to the date, and being right after September 11th. I think it also, that I think that affected it as well. If we were doing this in February or something, maybe they'd be like, yeah, we'll do it for a group or, strangers or whatever. But in a way, it was just done for us.
Yeah. Oh, and then so we had one last group after the performance, which was a funny hybrid, right? Well, it was predominantly together, in person. Again, as Elizabeth mentioned, food is really important. Gathering together, eating is so important in the fire department. So every group I've ever run, we always have a big meal. Everyone brings in food for the last group. So we brought in food. There were some people that couldn't make it in person though. And so we kind of had this really funny rigged up kind of watching show party with some people that were in person, and then others we put on Zoom and watched it on the phone. It was kind of a technological feat. And so we watched the performance and had a closure and processing after everyone watched it.
Which is also part of the therapeutic theater process as well. Having that space after to process the performance. We wanted to make sure we had that.
Yeah.
So as Jessie had up that slide, this is our contact information. If you want to reach out to us with any further questions or for the PowerPoint slides or the stories, we're happy to share or talk more. I'm mindful of the time, and we have our script to read through and our casting. I hope everyone's prepared a monologue or a scene to audition. Just kidding.
Well, and do we want to? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say,
break, but maybe you were getting there.
If we wanted to continue with taking the 5-minute break, or leave some airtime right now to answer a few questions, how is everybody feeling? You put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
I'm going to stop sharing. We could also take some questions too. I mean, if someone just needs to, go use the bathroom,
take care of yourself,
relaxed, or even any kind of stretching, or, we all might even just want to take this opportunity just to take your eyes away from the screen if you haven't, and just kind of take in the space around you. You might want to find where in your space, if in your space there's, maybe out the window or whatever, but just kind of playing around with kind of looking far away at a farther away sight line, which is a kind of a really nice balance between looking so close on the screen. So I can look out a window here and see quite far across my courtyard. Jeffrey said he will be back.
Allison will be back as well. Just noting where in your body all this content is landing. And we just offered a lot of information. So if anything is resonating, or if you're buzzed out from all the information, just noticing it.
Elizabeth, I just want to ask you a question. I mean, we can think, I don't know if there is like an opportunity to, if we were to cut some of this script, so I don't think we're gonna have the time to read it all unless we're like super readers, which kind of defeats the purpose of really sitting with the story. I don't know if you have any thoughts of like part two.
Yeah.
I feel like the ending feels nice to have the closure. That's why I'm saying like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
we
have,
just started and see where we end up. But again, I feel like the closure is kind of not nice to end with, you know.
yeah, I think, sorry, I'm looking at it now to see.
You know what? I'm gonna go run to the bathroom. I'll be
Okay.
right. Sorry, guys.
I'm gonna be here in case anyone has any questions or reflections, is anything even that came up that you wanted to give voice to before we move into the text. Um, yeah, doesn't have to be a question.
I actually had a question. I was curious, like, what are the like creative backgrounds of your participants for this group? And like, did they have any prior experience with some kind of therapeutic group?
That's a great question. So some of the participants had been individual clients of mine or Jessie's. So they knew drama therapy or creative arts therapy through us. But of course, in the individual sessions, that varied depending on what it looked like. Um, in their own personal lives, we also had some folks that were, I think, had been part of a group, a drama therapy uh, trauma group. And in their personal lives, we had one person who was a poet, but I don't think anybody else had any artistic, like, or I don't want to say artistic, but any like creative arts uh inclination. Like they didn't really participate that in that in their personal lives in a way of like in like a structured way. If I'm misremembering, Jessie, please let me know.
No, that sounds right to me. And, you know, I mean, I think that there was a constant reminding, and I'm sure that you guys, you know, experience this in all of like our different, you know, kind of art mediums, therapeutic art mediums of like, this is not, you don't have to be a good actor, you don't have to be a professional, you know, that kind of thing, right? All of those sort of insecurities that come along with that. That I feel like they didn't quite fully believe us until the end, you know, and then it was like, wow, we did this, right? So.
Yeah. So, you know what I'm thinking for the script, if folks don't have any other questions, Jessie, let me know what you think about this because we are working with time. Um, I think what we might do is dip in and dip out. So we can do some of the beginning, we can do some of the middle, and we can do some of the end.
Mhm.
If that feels right.
That sounds great to me. I
Okay.
mean,
So do we have everybody back?
I think so.
Okay. So if we want to pull, Jessie, would you mind pulling up the script?
Wait, hold on. Sorry.
That's right. As you're doing it, I'll just talk a little bit more about like the casting and the process of like, right, as we said, we had no dress rehearsal. It was like, here it is, here's your script, let's go. There were, right, Odyssey is huge. There are so many roles and stories. And what we had was we had to work with our number of participants, as well as the clinicians. So we had Jessie and myself, and then an intern, and we took on the roles of uh, like some of the gods, some of the containing roles, or like a authoritative role. Um, I read stage directions, and then Jessie played Athena for like intervention, right? Like divine intervention. Athena was a god in Odysseus's life who would guide him often. And then Samantha, our intern, played a lot of varying roles. Like, so she had a lot of fluidity. So we had these roles that were really containing, and then one that was like really supportive in this tangible way. And then we had our cast members. So this is the script itself. And what we can do is why don't we read a bit of it? I can't see everybody on my screen. Jessie, can you? Is there anybody who feels like not reading today? And I can't see everyone, so Jessie, I'm letting you tell me.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna switch the way I can see everyone.
And there's no wrong answer to that
does
question. If you feel like
does anyone not want to read? Is anyone a no? Okay. I think everyone
Okay.
is a thumbs up.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with just this first part. This is the beginning of our script. And we're going to just do a little flyby casting. I will read stage directions. Would someone like to read reader 1? I can't see who is raising their hand. Jessie, will you?
I can read it. This is Shelby.
Shelby? Okay, great. Thank you, Shelby.
Shelby, reader 1. Okay.
All right.
2.
Reader 2.
Allison will take that.
Allison, great. Thanks, Allison. And then reader 3.
Reader
I can
3.
take that one.
Jeffrey, okay. Thank you. And then Thomas Odysseus. Anyone interested in reading that role? Jessie, do you want to read Thomas Odysseus?
I'd love to.
Scroll down a bit here. I also have this on my
Elizabeth, is there a reason why you didn't do reader 4 and reader 5?
No, not yet. I was just getting there. I was going through.
Oh, okay, because I'm sorry, you're
the
looking at it
script
that way.
itself.
I
That's all right.
have this list. That's why okay.
Gotcha. Is anybody interested in reading reader 4?
I can do that, Emily.
Emily, okay. Okay.
And then a reader 5.
Anyone interested? Crystal, how are you feeling? You interested in reading, or you want to kick back? I know you said you weren't feeling well. Okay. If
Do reader 5.
just kick back, great. Jessie, did you say?
I can do reader 5 too.
All right. So we're just going to start by reading through the text. to begin. And I'm gonna stop folks like at a point. And just before we dive in, speaking to this, so you'll see in the Odyssey, right, we have here the readers, these were like part of the synopsis, right? The story, the content. And then you'll see this character, Thomas Odysseus, which is a completely unique and new character step in. So that was something that was written by one of the participants, which became this character that flowed throughout the script. Rather than talking in theater, right? Don't, yeah, let's move into it.
Anyone has like, a sword or some like, gold
Prop.
crown close by. Any quick props, please. Bring them on. I don't. What? I should have prepared. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay. Anything you want to use is near you. This is just for us to live through the experience of the script itself. So before we start reading, I'm just going to invite everybody to take a collective breath together. Just breathing in and out and feeling the ground beneath your feet. If your legs are crossed, you can uncross them. I'm speaking to myself with that too.
Ooh, and Jeffrey, do you have is there we got a scarf here?
Oh, amazing.
Oh, great.
All right. The Odyssey. The stage is mostly bare, except for an empty table at stage left. Readers enter and stand at either side of the stage. The actors enter, bringing with them miscellaneous table settings, plates, glassware, a tablecloth, to set the table. Once the table is set, the actors take a seat. They might talk briefly, joke, or laugh with one another, sit in silence. Who knows? Pause. Slowly, one by one, the actors stand and move away from the table, taking a piece of the setting with them and placing it somewhere else on the stage. They begin to share their story.
Odysseus spent 10 years fighting at Troy and another 10 years returning home to his kingdom in Ithaca.
During this time, none of his family knew what had happened to him, and he lost all his ships, all his men, and all the spoils of Troy.
When Odysseus set sail for Troy, he left behind his wife, Penelope, and his infant son, however he's at him, Telemachus.
Telemachus. Right. Which, because this is all happening in real time, is this really juicy thing that happens with these Greek texts that we all encounter new language. And this would happen in our groups, Jessie and mine. So just to speak to that, loving part of reading through this ancient text, right, as we are all navigating it together. With a pad of paper and pen in hand, Thomas Odysseus moves downstage away from the group. He finds a comfortable spot and reads from his duty log notepad.
FDNY EMT Thomas Odysseus. Duty log 9/11/01. 0800 hours. A beautiful sunshine-filled day. Warm as summer.
A few years before Odysseus's return, the young bachelors of his kingdom made themselves at home in his palace as uninvited guests and began courting Penelope. She remained faithful to Odysseus, clinging to the hope that he might come back, and cleverly held off the suitors without saying she would never marry again.
Telemachus desperately wanted to throw the suitors out, but he lacked the confidence and experience to do so.
Unknown to the suitors, Odysseus was still alive. The beautiful nymph Calypso, desiring Odysseus to be her husband, had imprisoned him on her island.
Thomas Odysseus continues to read from his notepad, away from the other actors.
FDNY EMT Thomas Odysseus. Duty log 09 11 01. 08 50 hours. Coffee break with academy staff and students. The coffee truck guy says, "Do you believe that plane hit the Trade Center?" A collective gasp came from the class. And we received notification of the biggest attack on our country from the roach coach driver. The journey begins.
Odysseus longed to return to his wife and son, but he had no ship or crew to help him escape.
We're going to pause here just for a moment, just to check in and to speak briefly or hear any response from folks as you are starting to now see in real time what we were talking about, this toggling back and forth between the ancient text and the experience of our participants, the 9/11 experience of our participants and how we interwove those things together. Anything coming up for anyone, just as you see it here? Okay. So we can move forward a bit. This is how we are learning, right, of 9/11, the beginning of the story, how the beginning was experienced, right? And the beginning and right of the journey back home for Odysseus. So if we're moving forward, you might be hearing my children. They're coming home from the playground on the other side of the door. Okay. Let's keep reading. We need a stage manager. Does anybody feel drawn to that role? It could be, I mean, we're all going to be recycling. You know what? I can read through it really quickly and then we'll keep moving forward. How about that? Another actor moves downstage from the group and addresses the audience. He holds a clipboard in his hands. This is the stage manager. Stage manager. 10 years of fighting full speed ahead and 10 years trying to survive to get home to the finish line. The stage manager moves freely about the stage, observing the action. He might jot down a note or two. He might interact with the other actors from time to time. He might jump in to join the action on stage. Thomas Odysseus continues to read.
Seconds later, the lieutenant flies onto the training field. "Drop what you're doing. A plane's crashed into the Trade Center. Get your gear. We've been mobilized."
Thomas Odysseus moves further downstage. He reads silently from his notes.
Meanwhile, in Ithaca, I can't say it. Telemachus? How did you say it?
Telemachus.
Yes.
Telemachus travels to the mainland in search of news of his father and hears that Odysseus is alive.
Okay, so in this next part, we're introduced to Athena, which is the guide to Odysseus. Jessie, do you feel like just reading that briefly so we get the introduction to her? The goddess Athena enters. She sets herself apart from the other actors by standing on a chair.
Athena, Odysseus' strongest supporter among the gods, resolves to help Telemachus. The suitors, however, set an ambush to murder Telemachus upon his return to Ithaca.
On Mount Olympus, Zeus sends Hermes to rescue Odysseus, and he persuades Calypso to let Odysseus build a ship and leave.
The actors build a makeshift ship out of chairs and sail away. They sail along the sea, encountering various obstacles and smooth waters. The stage manager helps to build the ship, directing the crew as needed. Thomas Odysseus continues to read. So I also just want to say the stage manager was a role that obviously was not part of the Odyssey, so that was a participant created role.
FDNY EMT Thomas Odysseus, duty log 09 11 01. 09:30 hours. With students and gear packed on training vehicles, decommissioned ambulances, the staff sped off to Manhattan. Some took the Midtown Tunnel, EMT Odysseus took the Triborough Bridge. It was backed up for miles with panicked drivers and reports of bomb threats. It took 45 minutes to cross the span. They cut across Manhattan through Central Park to south on the West Side Highway, and as they drove south, they witnessed the towers fall. Thousands of people stagger uptown.
Reader 1 calls out from the ship while sailing with his fellow crew members.
Odysseus sets sail, but Poseidon, god of the sea, sends a storm to wreck Odysseus's ship. Poseidon has harbored a grudge against Odysseus since he blinded his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus,
Polyphemus, yeah.
Polyphemus earlier in his travels.
The stage manager speaks to the crew. Oh, sorry, I lost it. Stage manager speaks to the crew and audience from the ship. The job imprisons you with the horrors of sights seen that cannot be forgotten and lures you in like a drug for more.
Shortly after, the ambulance pulls into Chelsea Piers FDNY staging area.
Athena steps down from her chair and steadies the ship and its crew.
Athena sees that Odysseus and his crew are struggling on the rough waters, and she intervenes to save Odysseus from Poseidon's wrath.
Thomas Odysseus continues to read from his notepad.
FDNY EMT Thomas Odysseus, duty log 091101, 0930 hours. Odysseus and crew helped set up medical and psychological triage centers in the vast buildings on the pier.
All right. So we're going to we can keep moving through this a bit. So as you can see, we're going in and out, and now we're like in the work of the retelling of what was happening on 9/11. So again, playing with the distance. So this was our synopsis and our story, and we have this Thomas Odysseus character who is guiding us through toggling actually in and of himself with the aesthetic distance. As we had mentioned, the first story that we had moved into was the land of the lotus eaters. And so we're going to just drag down a little bit to where we get to that part. Oh, wait, where are we? Okay.
Right there, Elizabeth, is that Odysseus to his men?
Yeah, so this part here, so now we actually hear from Odysseus, the character. Would somebody be into reading that role?
Allison.
Great. And anyone for the Islander?
Can read the Islander.
All right,
Okay,
Jeffrey,
Jeffrey.
thank you. Okay, so we have Odysseus and his crew exit the ship and look around this strange new island. An islander appears offering beautiful lotus flowers to Odysseus.
What sort of flowers are these?
They come from the lotus tree. They have the magical power of forgetfulness. They make a man forget the past. This is our greatest gift. The gods would be angry if we did not offer to feed our guests.
Forget his memories of home and his memories of his family and friends?
The stage manager moves towards Odysseus and his crew. He speaks to the actors on stage and the audience. The job has its own land of the lotus eaters where everything is ingested to try and forget or just get by and feel normal. So I'm going to go through, this was actually a poem that we co-created as a group with the Land of the Lotus Eaters story. So I'm just going to go through and read it just for time's sake, and then we can keep moving forward. They felt at ease, blissful, crew members looking for an escape. The island was relaxing. The crew members felt relaxed. Odysseus was stressed. Struggles of the past, struggles of the future, nothing to strive for. Struggles from the past, can't remember. Felt like a child having fun. Ignorance is bliss. Crew members looking for their crutch. Crew members looking for coping mechanism, looking to cope. A break, negative coping. Odysseus trying to bring the crew back to reality. Parallels, bringing back to reality. Stuffing, trying to forget. I don't know if it was good for me at that time. Normal, whatever that is. The new normal. The new normal.
What sort of flowers are these?
Right. So as we were speaking to that tracking that we did, so this poem was a co-created poem of like what the participants had created, and then also some of the tracking that we had for that Land of the Lotus Eaters group. Okay. And then
I just
moving
want to
forward. I'm sorry, go ahead.
just to add to that really quickly too, because I think that's like, so yeah, we did the tracking as Elizabeth said, and it's like that day when we did that and we did the sort of the verbal tracking out loud after we played around with that scene where we said earlier we all just kind of like got high and hung out in this island, right? It's like, I mean, and this is like, Elizabeth, we were so lucky to have her as a great playwright, but also it's like these things were being interwoven through every group, right? There was something like this or something that someone else wrote, right? That we didn't necessarily say, we're going to put this into the script, right? It was sort of like slowly compiled over time.
Mhm.
Again, the members weren't, I mean, they were aware we were writing it all down, but just sort of a way that kind of interweaved slowly.
Yeah, I think just having the therapeutic theater process, right? The ear of the clinicians and the playwright, and like us all wearing multiple hats that we could pull in really our whole group. Again, to have the script be the container of everything that had happened in the group and reflect it back in this really concrete way was a powerful experience. And you're right, like a privilege to be able to do that.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm just, as you can see here, it's right at the center of our screen, which we talked about before going into the land of the dead. We resourced Odysseus. As you can see here, water to keep you well, a sword, friendship, and Vicks Vapor Rub, ears, someone to talk to when it gets dark, a torch, your official badass badge. Right. So we were able to put that into the script as well before we went into reading through the land of the dead. And again, for time's sake, I'm just going to read through right below that with the crew. This was again a poem that we created about that. Every year we enter the cave of the dead, into the fog and into the mist, the smoke, the haze, the gods, Odysseus and the cave of the dead. Scrolling down a bit, as I had mentioned, one participant, their original work was this letter from Odysseus's mother. And I was wondering if anybody felt compelled, like in wanting to read that. And if
I
not, Jessie or I
happy
could.
to, yeah, if no one, right?
Oh,
I'm not missing anything. Okay. Okay, I can read it. So this is Odysseus' mother reading the letter. My dear Odysseus, I wept for you. I'm here in the underworld, for I died of a broken heart awaiting your return. I tried to remain hopeful and strong while you were gone, but the grief was just too much to bear. I'm happy that I was able to see you when we had the visit to the land of the dead. But this too was so painful, knowing that I would most likely never see you again. The most difficult part of our encounter was our inability to embrace one another but one last time. I ask for your forgiveness for not having the great strength that your father possessed to withstand the heartache of your absence. To your father, tell him that I'm sorry and I miss him so very much. Tell him that I will be forever waiting for the day that we are together again. Tell him I tried with all my heart to stave off the grief and sadness of your absence, but it was just too much for me to withstand.
right. Okay. So again, these waves of pulling into the story. The original group members. We had our last part was writing. So we're going to.
Elizabeth, your audio's kind of funny for me. Is it for everyone else? I don't, now we can't hear you.
As the Odyssey ends.
Okay, you're back.
Oh, did you miss me? I'm sorry, my AirPods died.
That's what it was. Okay, so it's just that adjustment and we're good now.
Sorry, so we're going to scroll ahead now because we want to have time to talk more about it or open this up to questions. So our final story that we moved into was Peace, which was the homecoming of Odysseus and how he came back home with his father Laertes. And there's this moment of this intergenerational feast with Laertes, Odysseus, and Telemachus. And there is a moment in the actual text, right, where they all kind of want to continue battling. And Athena intervenes and is like, no, you need to have peace. We're done. No more fighting. Which when we think about trauma, right? Like the recurrence of trauma and like how it feels as though like there's almost this compulsion to continue. That we have again this like divine intervention moment of no, just rest. It's okay to rest. It's okay to be at peace. It's okay to be at home. And there's even like a thunderbolt from Zeus that happens in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, it took the intervention of two powerful gods, right, to interrupt this impulse to fight, right? It's just in the nervous system of a warrior.
So we wanted to reflect that in the text. And then one of our participants, they wrote from the perspective of Odysseus, and we were all gathered around. One metaphor that I was using as a playwright was the metaphor of the table. And in the FDNY culture, the firehouse, the table was really a metaphor of like the gathering in the meeting space. So as we were putting it together in the beginning of the script, disassembling it, we were also bringing it back together at the end. And so when we reached the end of this script, we had everyone gathered around the table, and one of our participants wrote this cheers, this toast speech from a distance.
It's farther down, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there it is. There it is.
Our second to last page. Is anybody interested in reading Odysseus's toast, glass in hand? And if not, Jessie and I could read it as well. Okay.
Do you want to do it, Elizabeth?
Yeah. As we sit round this table with our food and our wine, first I wish to thank my son, Telemachus, for standing by my side. I also wish to thank my father, Laertes, for being here tonight. Let's not forget my wife, Penelope, for standing by my side. It's been about 20 years since we have all been together. With all God's faith, they saw fit to have my family with me at a time of peace, after much bloodshed by the sword. I want to toast. So raise your cups and toast to my son, Telemachus, and my father, Laertes. Let's celebrate tonight. Let us now drink and eat, because tomorrow is another day. And we cheers. How the script ended as we had Telemachus speak to the last moment of his reflection of his father. It was also a way of us tightening up the story, just kind of pulling the threads together at the end. And I just wanted to note that one of the last lines that was from a participant was that stage manager line. Are we cursed by the gods, or are we blessed to have lived such a life, saving others and offering our mind and body for the good of others? A question to be left with, right? And then we have that divine closure by Athena, and the gods looked favorably upon Odysseus, his wife, and his son. The end. All right, so So let's come back to, we can stop sharing the screen.
You might just notice where in the body, right? There's so many pieces of the script that we read, but where in your body might this be kind of landing with you right now? I'm feeling a lot in my chest. Anyone else notice anything they might want to share?
I feel like is a lot of weight in the heart and the shoulders.
Mm. Yeah, the heart and the shoulders. Yeah. So just, again, just checking in, and we have a chat here. Crystal says, I'm feeling a lot in my chest. It brought too much of a 9/11 pack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Crystal. So
just acknowledging that, right? That before we even moved into the script, we're sharing the content, right, of this group. And that was such that this is a trauma that's not only felt collectively and also individually, and it can bring up those memories, either those collective memories or those individual memories that remember what I was wearing or remember the day, the sounds, right? So just an invocation to be gentle with yourself. If anything does get stirred up, look both ways before crossing the street. Memory is powerful. Yeah.
And again, just an offer just to think about, taking a break from you with your eyes from the screen, or, we're all in our own personal spaces. I hope those spaces feel cozy enough, good enough today. So, even taking in any part of where you're at in your own space, focusing in on something that just feels nice, pleasant, neutral. So we're going to end. We have a little closing ritual that we'll end with. But before we do that, any questions?
Yeah, I had a question about the phrase like the new normal. I heard that so often during the pandemic. So I was just wondering if that was a nod to kind of like COVID times. I know this was in 2021, correct?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I was also just thinking too like how it's kind of like compounding, right? Like the 9/11 anniversary, collective trauma, and then also COVID on top of that. I know that's very heavy, but I'm just curious about, I guess, the phrase "the new normal" and the the combination of the two.
It came from the group.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to speak to like the where did it come from? It came from the group, which also like first responders were so impacted by COVID, right?
Mhm.
So that was like, and they had the 20th anniversary following 2020, right? Like following the COVID pandemic. So it was on the tip of the tongue of so many people. And then I think it's also can be speaking to like a post-trauma, right? Like the new normal post a traumatic event. Jessie, is there anything?
Yeah, and I think just particularly a collective trauma.
Yeah. I found that to be very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Shelby.
I think my question's about Odysseus. As thinking through that process, did someone come forward to play Odysseus' role? And if so, did there have to be any follow up with them? I mean, that's a big role, especially within that collective group.
Yeah. So we, well, Thomas Odysseus was a different, a separate character. Um,
And that was the
and
same person. That was the same. Thomas Odysseus was the same actor throughout.
yes, yeah. And we had group members switch who was Odysseus. So there wasn't one same actor who played Odysseus the whole time. We used, was it green? I don't know. I got all of this like velour fabric donated to us, and it was all these like kind of deep gemstone colors, right? There was like a green and I don't know. I think it was green, but it doesn't matter. There was one specific kind of robe scarf fabric that Odysseus wore. So it was traded off to be clear about who was playing Odysseus, and that role got traded, switched.
We shared the weight of him, and then we also had not just the synopsis, but the three stories to share the weight of him throughout, like leading up to the script. And there was a continuing checking in. And not only a checking in, but a de-rolling too, right? Once it was moved into, we would move out as well.
Yeah. So a simple example of like de-rolling in drama therapy might just be something like, Odysseus is from like ancient Greek antiquity, and I am, Jessie, and it's 2025.
Yeah.
And I'm a drama therapist, right? And I'm not a soldier or trained to fight, right? Or something like that.
One way you're alike, one way you're different.
Yeah. Any other thoughts that came up, or just, responses, whether it's, questions about the process or what the group looked like, or just even moments, that kind of stuck out to you, or things you're kind of holding on to. We want to remind you to, we'll put our emails up. So we really welcome anyone that might want to, reach out, email us afterwards with any questions at all. Yeah. So, we had this closing ritual. I know we have a minute left. So I just invite you to think about if there might be a character or a role or a part of the story, the script that we read today, that's sticking out to you, that spoke to you in some way. You don't even really have to know why or how, or just something that feels interesting to you around the story. It might even be a part of the story, like, if you do have some knowledge to the Odyssey already, right? Kind of, yeah. And yeah, you might want to just to end, we could even just kind of name that character if you want, and think about, one quality, or could be a quality, excuse me, or like an image, or even as we did, as you saw in the script, like something almost like a tangible kind of prop that you might just want to like take with you and as you sort of leave this training today, take with you for the rest of the day, take with you for your work week next week. Does that make sense? So you might want to just say the name, the character that's sticking out, or a part of the script, and then just a quality or a prop or an image or something connected to it that you want to just kind of take with you.
I can start. I'm going back to like the poem. I mean, to me, like the poem and the letter, as an art therapist, it kind of reminds me of like mixed media. I don't know if that makes sense, but like how different people are contributing like different forms of like the written word was so cool to me. And that just reminded me of like collaboration. Yeah, it was just amazing how everyone came together and wrote this whole thing. So that's what I'm taking with me.
Thank you. Collaboration. Yeah.
You can go next. I think that experience of Thomas, or Odyssey Thomas, the power of that journey, the trauma work that was done there, and then just the patience that would have to be shared amongst everyone and the strength at the same time. So,
Yeah. Mm. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Patience and the strength.
I'm just thinking a lot about how the script is shifting between times almost, and looking back into a pivotal moment in your life, you're kind of flashing back to it and then coming back to your present, and the back and forth of that sensation as you relive that experience is really gonna stick in my head for a little while.
Mm.
Shifting back and forth.
Yeah, I think similarly, like what stuck out to me was like the playwriting and that juxtaposition of, the participants telling their story alongside the Odyssey. And I was kind of envisioning, I mean, when I was in New York City, I used to go see a lot of theater, and like even it reminded me that during COVID, I saw a lot of like virtual Zoom productions of plays and stuff like that. And it kind of just reminded me of all the creative ways they would like stick in like different imagery and different metaphors. And like, you were mentioning like the meaning of the table, and things like that just kind of stuck out to me. And I was kind of, I was getting this picture in my head of like what that must have looked like for them to do that in person, um, and like go through those motions in real life, and, hear each other say all the different lines and stuff. Yeah, that was really impactful to me.
Thanks, Emily.
Theater of it, visualization.
Great. Thank you all. Crystal, I know you might be still kicking back and watching, which I hope you are. I hope you're feeling okay. Jump in if you want to say anything, of course. And I know we went 5 minutes over. I hope that's okay. Thank you guys for that, for your time, for all your time. Yeah, really, I mean, we can end here. I'm grateful. I'm just taking in this whole really like small, intimate, really nice group and all of your feedback and curiosity. And it's really fun to share. I mean, we haven't shared this work publicly yet. So it's just been really exciting. And I'm really grateful for all of you that we got to share it, and your questions and curiosities and feedback. It's been great. So I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take the witnessing. The audience.
Yes. Yes. And I'm echoing the gratitude that Jessie had just shared. And it's been just so wonderful to expand into your ITA community. And I'm so grateful that we had so many people from ITA today. And just also branch out beyond New York. Too. That's really exciting. Branch out beyond drama therapy. So as Jessie had said, we're always so excited to share this work. It's the first time we are, and so grateful for a small, intimate group to do it with. And I'm in the spirit of theater, like taking this collaboration with me. I'm grateful for that. And if Jessie's okay to share our contact information just one last time in case somebody wanted to write that down. If not, I can put it in the chat if that's faster.
Oh, I just typed mine. Can you type yours?
Mine in as
I'm
well.
not very quick at switching back and forth between the share screens, so
I Jessie, do you want to go ahead and do that? Um, because I'm not great with it either. So feel free to reach out to us. We're hoping to write an article on this work. So to give it more legs. And so stay tuned. But if you have any questions or, if you want to take another look at the PowerPoint or the script or just there's our contact information to reach out to us.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.